All right, everybody. Kelly here, Central Florida's Real Estate Ninja. And while this channel is dedicated to helping you research not only the Clermont, Florida market, but the surrounding Central Florida area, I have to go ahead and drop this video. I've been pondering how to do this. I don't like to go negative. I don't want my channel to be clickbaity. I don't want to focus on the negative. But guys, a recent legal ruling has absolutely sent a tsunami through the real estate market, not just in Florida, but nationally. And if you're going to list a home or buy a home, you need to be aware of how this will impact you. So stay tuned. I'm about to unpack this and get into what's going to happen as of July that can impact you as a home seller or home buyer. And guys, it's significant. All right, let's get into this and let's find out what's going to happen in July. All right, guys, as we get into some significant changes, I want you to know that you're still going to be able to list your home, you're still going to be able to sell it, and you're still going to be able to buy a home. But how you transact that is going to change. You know, for a couple years as real estate agents and consumers of education with regard to our industry, I've been seeing some lawsuits work their way through the courts in a couple states. And in a nutshell, and I'm going to be very simplistic, you can do your research. Some attorneys got together and filed class action lawsuits against some large brokerages and NAR, the National Association of Realtors, charging them with being deceptive in the commission practices. In other words, charging sellers X amount of commission and forcing sellers to give part of that to buyers. That's the simplistic view of this, but let me unpack this. So anytime you see, and this part is my opinion, guys, so again, research it on your own, but whenever you see attorneys start to do things like this class action lawsuit, you're going to see them reaching out to homeowners, postcards, letters. Hey, if you listed your home in the last X years in this city or in this state, you might want to check out this class action suit. You might be in position to receive monies from this lawsuit, right? Homeowners were jumping on that like crazy. I mean, it's money, right? And so the core of their argument was that real estate agents, when you go to list a home, were having the seller sign on an actual contract that they were going to pay X amount of commissions to the listing agent. The other part of that contract was where the listing agent then was disclosing how much money of that commission the seller agreed to pay they were going to give to buyer's agents. Guys, in the real estate market, the way this works is a listing agent will list a home for sale, and a buyer's agent will bring a ready, willing, and able buyer to the transaction. The buyer agent represents the buyer, listing agent represents the seller. Everybody has their representation. And so the commissions were agreed upon. Nobody forced the sellers to sign it. It was absolutely a fee that the seller could negotiate with the listing agent. And what I mean by that is traditionally it's 6% to sell a home. We do see people charging 7% and some charging 2, 3, 4, and 5%. All of that's negotiable. A listing agent cannot dictate what a seller agrees to pay when they list their home. A listing agent can simply say, this is what I charge. The homeowner has the right to negotiate that. Now, having said that, the homeowner will sign that listing agreement disclosing how much they're paying. And at closing, once the home successfully sells, the listing agent's broker will get their portion of the commission. The buyer's agent broker for bringing a buyer would get their portion. And so that's how it's been for decades. And so what the lawyers, when they created these class action lawsuits, did was basically fan the flame of, oh, corruption, scam. And a lot of homeowners bought into it. And as you know, especially in 2024, when we're seeing crazy lawsuits, the big companies, NAR and some of the big ones like Keller Williams, they just decided to settle. They looked at settling, not admitting guilt, but settling because it was going to be absolutely expensive, in some cases, possibly bankrupting these companies to continue to fight something that had such public sentiment based on no fact, but conjecture. So do I think that there are instances where real estate agents can be a little forceful? Yes, but as a homeowner, it's up to you to negotiate that with the agent and the broker you're hiring. So, what happened? Well, last week, it was a Friday, NAR, which is the covering of all the real estate agents in America, we pay every year a lot of money to be a part of NAR, the National Association of Realtors, released a statement. It will be ratified conditionally by July. And the statement basically reads as thus: as of July, there will no longer be buyer's agent compensation on the MLS. So when you go and you find a home on the MLS, it typically stated the listing agent, when they uploaded all of that information and created a listing, would put and disclose what the seller was willing to pay, or what they're willing to pay, the buyer's agent to bring a contract that they ratify, that they execute. Well, that's no longer on there. NAR also stated that the listing agreement will no longer have in its documentation any commissions that will be outside of what the seller is paying the listing agent. So what does that mean? That now means that buyer's agents are no longer guaranteed a commission unless, and I'm going to cover the 4 options, unless one of these 4 options happens. And this is where it could impact you as a buyer. Now, do I think that home sellers are going to say, I'm not paying buyer agents anymore? No, it's the buyer's agents that bring the buyers. And why would a buyer agent continue working if they're not going to get paid, right? So let's now navigate how this is going to impact you. Number 1, as of July, or some date in July, once this is ratified and consummated, as a buyer, you are going to have to, if you're going to hire a real estate agent, sign a buyer's agency agreement. This is national. At that date in July, a buyer's agent will not legally be able to work with you without this agreement in play. It's kind of like the listing agreement, but this is a buyer's agency. And that buyer's agency is going to go ahead and, inside of its content, going to share with you how they are going to get paid, the buyer's agent, right? And there are some instances where you as a buyer might have to pay the buyer's agent. So let's take a look at the 4 scenarios on how this would work for you. And then we're going to talk about why I think this is actually going to hurt the home selling market and ultimately home sellers. So let's see what the 4 options are, guys. This is very simple. Option 1, buyer pays buyer agent commission. So on that buyer's agreement, it could say something like, if the buyer, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, engage buyer's agent, whoever, then you agree to pay the buyer's agent at closing 2%, 2.5%, 3% commission on top of what you're paying in your down payment, your closing costs, and what you're financing, whether you're cash or financing. So the onus might be on you, the buyer, to pay your buyer's agent, right? That's number 1. Number 2, seller can pay the commission. That would happen when you, as the buyer, have your agent submit an offer on a home that you want to purchase. In that language, your agent can put compensation for his services to be paid by the seller. If the seller agrees, great. Now, how does that work on those first 2? You are going to have to put in there, if you're going to work with the agent, what you're willing to pay your agent. Now, let's say in this scenario, the agent says, I'm going to charge you 2% to work with me. If the seller does not agree to pay any buyer's agent commission, which I believe the first couple months we're going to see sellers trying to do this, which I think is going to hurt them, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But if the seller absolutely refuses to pay the buyer's agent's commission, then you, by signing that agreement, will be charged at closing for that commission. Number 3, buyer asks for X amount in seller concessions, which I just went over, and that's how that's going to affect 1 and 2. And closing costs. So let's say you're looking at a $500,000 home. The buyer's agent's going to charge you 2%. That's $10,000. The buyer's agent could say to the seller in contract, we're looking for $15,000 to cover buyer's agent's fee and buyer's possible potential portion of their closing costs. If the seller says yes, happy day. Buyer's agent gets paid, you make some closing fees. So that's a scenario that you could do. And number 4, seller can pay a portion, buyer pays a portion. So let's say again in this scenario, it's a 2% buyer's agent commission, $500,000 home. That's a $10,000 commission due the buyer's agent at closing. The seller could say, I'm going to pay $5,000. If you want to move forward on this home, then you, buyer, are responsible for the other 5. So guys, that is what potentially we are looking at in July. So for you, you have a couple options. You don't have to work with a buyer's agent. What are you left with? You could hire an attorney. Attorney can write an offer for you. Here's the problem. For people that think that all real estate agents do is open doors, this is where it gets a little bit controversial. The attorney is going to charge you $600 hours. So he might charge you $600 to write that contract, right? He will then give it to you. You will submit it to the listing agent. If they turn you down, and let's say they go with another offer, you still have to pay the attorney the $600. But let's say that they accept it. Then you go back to the attorney and say, happy day, they accepted it. Can you tell me who we can use to do the home inspections? By the way, who do you recommend for title work? By the way, what if there's a problem in the inspection? Are you going to be able to help us with that? Mr. Attorney, we noticed there was an issue with the appraisal. Can you run comps for me? Right? The attorney's going to say, absolutely not. I'm not a realtor. You should have hired a realtor to do all of that, because a buyer's agent will navigate all of these waters for you. The attorney won't. So again, option, you can hire an attorney, but that can be, and I'm not saying that's a bad way to go, but you have to understand everything involved with that. Another option, you can go directly to the listing agent. The listing agent represents the seller. So if you go to the listing agent and the listing agent's like, yes, I can write the offer for you. And you know what? I'm only going to charge 1%, right? All right. Okay. $500,000 home. It's only $5,000. Happy day. Do you think the listing agent, unless he already has an agreement with the listing, which if he's a good listing agent, he will, do you think that they are going to be more inclined to go and try to negotiate your commissions with the seller? Because they represent the seller, right? Now, there are states like Florida where we, as a listing agent, can work with a buyer and a seller at the same time. It's called transactional. Don't want to get too crazy with that, but it can happen. But if that listing agent hasn't already gotten with the seller and said, look, if a buyer comes, they're not represented, I might write the contract. Let's talk about what you're going to pay me. If that's not already in play, then you still might be in the hook for whatever commissions he's going to charge you or she's going to charge you to write the deal. And then once the contract's executed, you are now depending on the listing agent, who is now the buyer agent, to help you negotiate any issues that come up during inspection, any issues that come up with appraisal. Let's say you need to extend the closing date. He now has to go represent you to the people that he's already representing. You see where I'm going with that? So guys, that's why you really need to pay attention between now and July as this shakes out. Please, whatever you do, if you go to research this, don't listen to all the doom and gloom and naysayers. I personally think once this takes effect in July, we're going to see about a 6-month zombified version of real estate. It's going to be hectic for 6 months, and we're all going to have to figure out how to navigate this. But if you're working with a really good agent and the buyer's agent helps you navigate all of this, they are worth their weight. So be prepared, guys. If you're buying after July, the game's changed. Just be aware of how this can affect you. And make sure you are working with an agent that can help you navigate this, whether you're listing or buying, because, pardon me, this could have financial ramifications for you. All right. Drop comments below. If you have any questions, I'll try and get back to you on it. But be aware, while the market's going to be crazy starting in July, I think it's gonna work its way out over about 6 months. Time will tell. And as always, guys, if you are buying a home, even after July, and you contact me, let's talk about how I work for you, what I do for you. And as always, whatever commission that I'm going to get paid by the seller in that scenario, you're going to get 25% of it for your closing costs. I'm always going to do that for my buyers. And guys, in the last 6 months, I believe we've given somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 of our commission back to our clients. It's our promise to you. All right, that's it, guys. I typically don't like to do a lot of these negative videos, but I wanted you to be aware what was about to happen. If you have any questions, let me know. Drop some comments. And if you want to talk more about the real estate market in Central Florida, Clermont, and the surrounding areas, go ahead and reach out to me. I'll put my contact information below. All right, that's it. I appreciate you. And until I see you on the next video, keep in the know.